Thank you, Derek, and good evening, Toastmasters. Tonight, I'm going to share with you something that's had a big impact on my life, biking. People bike for various reasons, for fun, for transportation, for commuting, for exercise, to compete in races, and I've done most of those things. When people talk about racing, it usually involves things like fun or friends, being outside, breathing fresh air. It can be about endurance or an achievement. And again, I've experienced all those things on a bike. And while this all suggests a very positive experience with biking, my story is a bit more complicated. Like most people, I learned how to bike as a kid. I biked around my neighborhood. And then later, when I was a graduate student at UC Davis, I rode my bike around campus and around town. Now, Davis is a very flat town and a flat campus, very bikeable. Everyone rides their bikes. In fact, there are so many bikes on campus where there are no cars that they have traffic circles at the intersections to control the flow of bikes. And when I initially got to Davis, this was like a little it made me really nervous because I thought I would get stuck in one of these circles and just keep going round and round with no way out. That never happened. I had a great time at Davis biking for the 2 years I was there. I would go to classes, I would go to pubs and bars with my friends. It was a great time. Flash forward about 10 years later, and I started to get interested in triathlon. I had always been a runner. I'd been a runner for years. I loved swimming. We had a pool when I was growing up as a kid, and I swam a lot in the ocean when I was a kid too. And I had been doing spin classes. So since I had been doing and I like all those three activities, why not do a triathlon, right? So I joined a women's triathlon club and I trained for a race. I purchased a wetsuit for the swimming part, and I got a road bike for the bike part. I put hours in biking in the East Bay Hills as I trained for my first race. I also got clip-in shoes for my pedals so I could be like a real cyclist. I was on my way. My first triathlon race went really well. In fact, it was fun. I love the swim part because I enjoy being in the water so much. Running had always been my strongest sports activity for years, so I felt good about that. And the bike part also went well, but it was probably my least favorite part of the triathlon experience. I really didn't like being clipped into the pedals. I always worried about falling off or, when I stopped, not being able to get out. I wasn't a big fan of going really, really fast. And I mean, it's a race, like you're supposed to be going really fast. And I felt vulnerable moving among all these other bikers going fast. Like I didn't have anything to protect me. And I didn't have my feet firmly planted on the ground. And that made me feel a little nervous. But I moved past the anxiety. I got over it. And I caught the triathlon bug. I did about 6 to 8 races over about a 2-year period. Now, that may sound impressive. These were not Ironman races. These were like small little triathlons, sprint distance ones. But it was pretty good. And I actually ended up doing an Olympic distance one for my last race. And I consider all of that an achievement because I don't consider myself to be a particularly athletic person. I've never been really into sport. So this was pretty good for me. So after my last triathlon, I got busy with other things. Actually, I started dating my husband and dating my future husband, actually. And what happens when you're falling in love, that kind of takes up all your extra time. And I kind of, put the triathlon stuff aside. And I got married, I had a baby, and exercise in general took a backseat. About 8 years later, I wanted to start exercising again. I was running here and there. but I wanted to do more. And that was hard. It's hard when you have a family and you work to find time to exercise. I was working downtown and I had coworkers and friends at my daughter's school who commuted to work on their bike. And I thought, I still have my bike. I have a place to park it at work. Should I give this a try? I mean, why not, right? So I gave it a try. So I got ready for this. I took my bike to the bike shop, got it all cleaned up and ready to bike. I got a more larger cushy seat for my larger, older body now. I changed out the pedals to ones that were not clip-in, so I felt a little bit more secure on the bike. And I went on rides around my neighborhood to, get back into it. I went on rides with my friends, and I told them about my goal of commuting to work, and they were very encouraging and told me to go for it. And I even did a practice run from my house down to Market Street and back. And I did fine. It was not hard at all. And I felt very confident. Well, I felt pretty confident. So one weekday morning, I decided to go for it, to give it a go. I was nervous. I told my husband this, and he asked me, "Are you sure you want to do this?" And I waved him away. I'm like, "Of course. I'm nervous, but I'll be fine. People do this all the time, every day. It's no big deal." So I started my ride. I went through Golden Gate Park, through the Panhandle, then the Wiggle, through the Haight to Market Street, where I picked up the bike lane there, and it was no problem. I rode along Market Street towards the Embarcadero because I was going to take the Embarcadero to Levi's Plaza, where I worked. And things went well on Market until I got to about Front Street, where the bike lanes end. And some of the cars were there were a lot more cars. And trying to navigate through all those cars took a lot of my attention. So much of my attention that I didn't realize that I had turned my front wheel into a train track. And as I did that, I felt my wheel catch and slip, and I started to fall. I'm not even sure I fully realized what was happening, but one thing I did do, which you should not do when you fall, is I put my arm out like this. Doing this did not break my fall as I had hoped, or as I instinctively hoped. And instead I fell, and I found myself lying on my side on Market Street. And of course I was terrified because I thought I was going to get run over by a car or something. Also, I couldn't get up because my shoulder and my arm really hurt. So I screamed for help, and two men got me and my bike up, got me to the sidewalk. Somebody else called 911. While I was waiting for the ambulance, I, oddly enough, very calmly called my husband. I was also very stunned, and my coworkers, and told them what happened. And the ambulance came, I went to the hospital. It turns out, and I had thought that I had dislocated my shoulder. It turns out that I did not dislocate my shoulder. Instead, I crushed my shoulder, or rather the top part of the humerus right here, into many, many pieces. And it was on this day, the first day of my ever riding my bike to work, that I began not a new fun habit of commuting to work via my bike and being more active, but 2 years of 3 surgeries, one including a shoulder replacement, physical therapy, nerve damage in my hand and arm, I can't lift my arm up beyond that, so limited mobility. So not quite what I bargained for. Now I'm sharing this story not because it's as a cautionary tale for bike riding, although you could take it as that. Like Market Street's dangerous, be careful. Biking is a great activity for many people to enjoy. I'm just not that person, at least not now. when I see people biking around the streets of San Francisco, I have flashbacks to my accident and I think, stop, you're going to get killed. Don't do that. But I also see people tooling around on their bikes, electric bikes with their kids behind them, and people riding in Golden Gate Park. And I remember I'm nostalgic for how fun it used to be to do that. But needless to say, I have not been on my bike since the accident. I haven't even looked at my bike, which is sitting in a dark, dusty corner of our garage. But maybe someday I'll have a turnabout and I'll get back on my bike again, but only where there are no cars and no train tracks. Thank you.